And now it is time for our first speaker. I want to invite Yuri Greceto, who is leading our bureau in Riga, Latvia. Before that, Yuri, you were the bureau chief in Moscow until February 2022, when you were forced to shut down operations there. And you will be interviewing Dmitry Muratov, who is a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. So the stage is yours, Yuri.
Thank you, Liz. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A technical advice, since we are going to talk in Russian, we are going to switch into Russian. Please use your headphones after my small introduction in English. You can have a homeland without having freedom, but you can't imagine freedom without having a homeland. These words come from our fellow journalist, the Nobel Peace Prize winner Dmitry Muratov, who we are honored to have as a guest today. He's the founder and chief editor of Novaya Gazeta newspaper, one of the few independent outlets in Russia. Novaya Gazeta temporarily ceased its publication after Russia invaded Ukraine last year. Unlike hundreds of other Russian journalists who have left Russia since the war, Dmitry Muratov still lives and works in Moscow in Russia, despite the massive pressure, persecution and intimidation. Even before the invasion, Novaya Gazeta came under constant pressure, particularly because of its hard-hitting investigative stories. 5 Novaya Gazeta journalists have been murdered since the newspaper was founded, and others were attacked because of their work as journalists. But what does it mean to live and work in Russia today in times of war? Is it possible to bring unbiased information to the audience without risking your life and your freedom? Dmitry Muratov got an impression of what it means to be an independent critical journalist in Russia last year when he was attacked on a night train from Moscow and smeared with red paint. That was a signal: they won't tolerate you, leave Russia. But he stayed. He wanted to send his own signal. Let's hear more now from Dmitry Muratov himself. Mr. Muratov, the floor is yours. Dmitry, пожалуйста.
I'm sorry. Давайте проверим, есть перевод.
Let's check. Do you have translation into English?
Да?
Does it work?
Юрий уже сказал, я живу и работаю.
Well, you already said it. I live and work in Moscow, and I don't have an export version of my speech for you.
Поскольку слово «война»
as the word war is prohibited in Russia, but the word hell is still allowed, I'm going to use the word hell.
Вчера Генеральная прокуратура России объявила.
The General Procurator of Russia announced yesterday that the Lawyers Association, Agora, is a non-welcome organization, so enemies of the people.
Тюрьма.
And the conclusion is prison. And this means hundreds of people who were defended by Agora will not have legal defense. When I flew here yesterday, a new hearing started against the political leader Alexei Navalny. He's already in prison and he is threatened by decades of additional imprisonment for political activity. This court is closed to the press for the last 10 years. Since 2012, the number of closed court hearings where no journalist is admitted has multiplied by 25 times. So we had 1,000 and now it is 20,000 hearings without journalists. And those who are acquitted are about 0.01%. Do you have any questions about the Russian legal system? So this is one of the outcomes of what is called the special military operation. It's a dismantling of the judiciary. The special military operation is continuing, but many results are already evident.
Назову.
I'm going to tell you a few of them.
Когда больше Украина и Россия,
Ukraine and Russia will never be together in the future.
никогда эти народы не будут...
Never will these peoples will be brotherly,
считает себя всегда старшим.
even more so as one brother thinks he's the older one.
У нас
Another outcome,
великое географическое открытие.
we have a new geographical discovery in Russia. You may not have heard about it, I'm going to tell you.
Россия больше не Европа.
Russia is not Europe anymore.
Окно в Европу закрыто и...
The window to Europe has been closed and has been closed with bars.
Еще один итог.
Another outcome,
В России произошла смена Бога.
there has been a replacement of God in Russia.
Российская православная церковь
The
поддержала
Russian Orthodox Church has supported the special military operation and has started a propaganda of death.
Думаю, что заповедь
I think
«Бий» скоро будет
that
признана глубоко
the
ошибочной.
Ten Commandments, do not kill, will
Смерть за Родину,
soon be changed.
жизнь за Родину.
So
Новая...
you exchange
Только одна
death
цитата.
for
Попробуйте
your homeland.
Я вас очень прошу, только одна
So
цитата.
let's just listen to one quote of an official of the church.
Объясняет матерям,
He is explaining to mothers
плачут, когда
why
им привозят
they are crying when they get the corpse of their killed son back.
Пока понятно, да?
So far, understandable?
Протоиерей Васильев говорит,
So the protoierei Vasily says,
пользовались контрацептивом,
if you hadn't used contraceptives, then you would have given birth to more children,
не один.
and you wouldn't only have one son to cry about. It wouldn't be so terrible to say goodbye to your killed child.
Это говорится в телевизионном эфире. А вот
And this is what you hear on TV.
Иоанна Коваля
And Ioan Koval, another priest, has been
заменил
taken out because in church he has replaced in a prayer the word victory by the word peace.
отец
I
Иоанн
have the assumption that Father
Богу стал.
John Ioan is further from the state now but closer to God.
Это
Another outcome, that's the loss of a whole generation.
родившиеся при
The
Горбачеве
new generation which was born under Gorbachev and after
себя в жертву.
is not willing to sacrifice themselves.
Поколение строит,
This generation will build the future, whereas the
улучшить.
powers that be try to improve the
Это
past.
потрясающее, уникальное поколение.
This is an outstanding generation. These are professionals who are highly empathetic.
Покинули родину.
Many of them have left their home country. Many of them forever.
Коллеги, вам будет интересно.
And maybe it's interesting for you to hear.
Ехал навсегда.
We may know some who have gone forever. They take their pets with them.
Увеличилось количество
The number of chips for pets has multiplied by 26 times because people take their pets to live forever.
молодых людей.
From 700,000 to 1 million people have left Russia, young people. They do not want to kill,
Они хотят быть
and they don't want
убитыми.
to be killed.
И они не хотят быть убитыми. Я думаю, что
I believe
это поколение
to protect
для всех
this
нас,
generation is important for all of us, not only for Russia.
их
We have to help them, and we should enter them in the Red Book and not block their banking cards.
самый сложный вопрос
The most difficult question,
задают.
I'm often getting asked this, why do Russians stay silent?
А почему они не бунтуют?
Why do they not rebel?
Что, все россияне рабы?
Are all Russians slaves?
Я не буду уходить от этого вопроса и спрошу в ответ.
I'm not going to answer, but I'm going to answer with a question.
Где говорить?
So, where should they speak? Where
Давать.
are they to protest? Demonstrations are forbidden.
Политических заключенных
600 political prisoners are
20
in prison.
дел в отношении
20,000 litigations
300 негосударственных.
against peace activists. 300 media are closed. In the parliament, there's not a single member of parliament who
Люди, которые сидят
speaks
в тюрьмах,
for peace. Those who are in prisons
Женя,
should
сострадание,
have our respect. We should try to help them. And the purpose of my coming here is to tell you about a few of these peoples, and I still have time for that.
Я просил официально,
Officially
пользуясь тем, что газета получила Нобелевскую премию,
asked, well, you know, I asked the Red Cross, and because I'm a Nobel Prize winner, and I asked him to help Alexei Navalny, the leader of the Russian opposition. 165 days. He's not only in prison, but he's in a prison within a prison.
это место, где
This is a place
людей делают живых мертвецов.
where people are transformed into living corpses.
Он не может.
The Red Cross said they cannot interfere with that,
Их руководитель сейчас,
that their leaders are in Syria.
а их руководитель в это время находился
And the leader was actually with the office, in the office of the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov at this time.
за слово из 5 букв,
7 years
произносить
for a year of 7 letters, which is not to be pronounced in Russia.
Толстого, где второе
This is
мир.
from Leo Tolstoy's
Местный
book, where the second word is
Горина,
peace.
51 год. Он ученый.
There is a scientist, 61 years of age, not healthy,
Возможным
and
сказать, что когда
he felt he could say that if you could say there is a bloody fight, then there should not be
получил за
a competition for children's drawings. For this statement, he was imprisoned for 7 years.
совсем незадолго до этого приговора он
Before this ruling,
бродячую два.
he was picked up a dog.
После его ареста собака никогда
And
не подпустила к себе.
after he was arrested, the dog did not allow anybody and just died
Мне
from hunger
во время
and
страшной
feeling alone. And just think about this tragedy. Is it appropriate that I talk about the dog here? I'd say yes, it is, because in this story, animals are more humane than human.
Иван
people.
Гершкович, наш с вами коллега.
Ivan Gershkovich, a fellow journalist,
Журнал в Москве, я
the correspondent of the Wall Street Journal in Moscow. He's very well known in Moscow. He loves the country where he works. He's a fantastic journalist, and he definitely is not a spy.
Его посадили за шпионаж.
He was imprisoned for espionage.
Предыдущий раз за шпионаж журналисту Сафронову дали
And Safronov was sentenced for 25 years. And I hope that you and I
политики.
can
Вы собираетесь
speak out.
обменивать политических
Politicians
заключенных на тех, кто
do
находится
start
в тюрьмах.
to replace political prisoners, to free them.
25 лет лагерей получил политик
The politician
Владимир Карамурза. Он один из создателей,
Vladimir Karamurza
может быть, вы помните,
is a famous author. There was this Magnitsky case. You may remember this. And Magnitsky found
$100.
that $280 million had gone.
Владимир Карамурза
And this dossier,
попал
this investigation was prepared by Karamurza. But Sergei Podoprigorov was then sanctioned.
Я захожу в зал
And
суда, процесс закрыт.
I'm coming to the courtroom, you know, I'm just
В зал суда.
a witness.
И вот хорошо, что вы сидите. Знаете,
And
как
it's
я вижу?
good that you are sitting, because guess who was it? The process
Подопригор.
against Karamurza is led by this same gentleman.
И он дает Карамурзе 25
And
лет.
sentence Karamurza for 25 years. Is that not paying back?
Это глушилки.
I think this is just the sirens.
Слышно, да? Или продолжать?
Do you hear it? Should I continue?
У Карамурзы отказывают ноги. Он потерял
Karamurza
килограммов.
has lost 25 kilograms. His legs are weak. In 1 year,
Так.
okay.
А нам поможет кто-нибудь со звуком?
Would anybody help us with the sound here?
Слышно, да?
Do you hear it?
Да? Хорошо.
Okay.
За год
So, in 1 year,
возможности даже позвонить
Karamurza was not allowed to make a single phone call
ни одного раза.
to his 3 children, not once.
Лилия Чанышева, это красивая
Lily Chanjva is a beautiful 40-year-old lady, and
оппозиционера Навального.
she was working for Navalny, and she didn't kill anybody. She didn't steal. She didn't exercise violence. She's just a civil activist.
Вы видели, как сходят с ума от любви?
Have you ever seen how people go crazy
Ее муж Алмаз Гатин сходит с ума.
because
Он каждый день
they are
ждет ее с воротами.
waiting for their beloved? And her husband is waiting with flowers every day. And in his last words, Lilia did not talk about herself, but she said,
Если мне дадут срок, меня посадят в тюрьму.
if
Я не
I'm
успею
sentenced,
родить ребенка.
I won't have the time to give birth to a child. Give me the opportunity to become a mother.
Я Бекчурин не дал
The
шансов Чан.
judge did not give her this chance.
Она получила 7,5.
She was sentenced for 7.5 years.
Жестокость нынче,
The cruelty
государственный патриотизм.
is also
Зло
manifested by patriotism. So evil, it has become heroism.
шутку брошены. Блестящий режиссер
As
и драматург.
an alleged terrorist, Zhenya Berkovich and Zhana Petrachuk were sentenced. They got the theater Oscar, the Golden Mask in Moscow. But an expert wrote
Андроцентричного государства России.
that they are against the androcentric state.
Что
Well,
Беркович
it's a male government. So Berkovich
мужского государства
was
в России.
speaking against
А феминизм
masculine
и пацифизм признаны
state.
преступления.
And feminism is deemed
Они в тюрьме.
a crime. So they will be sentenced.
Многочисленные
And
ультраправые
then there are many right-wing Nazi activists
обсуждают
who can freely
происхождение Беркович.
discuss the Jewish origins of Berkovich.
Антисемитизма
For the last 20 years, there has been no official anti-Semitic propaganda.
прикнуть не может.
Nobody can judge Putin
Начали участвовать.
an anti-Semite, but neo-Nazis are participating in the political agenda of today's Russia.
Меня сегодня спросил кто-то,
I've been asked today,
что репрессии уже такие масштабные,
are the repressions already as bad as under Stalin?
количество арестов, а тем более
As far as the number of arrests and shootings, of course, is less. But
репрессии.
what defines repression?
Это когда никто
Repression means when nobody knows
сегодня ночью.
who will be arrested the next night.
Мне пора заканчивать.
I have to wrap up.
За будущее идет борьба.
We have a fight for the future.
Идет борьба,
There is a fight
каким будет,
for
идет сражение за то, каким будет
who will define society.
хунта,
Will this junta
свободная игра.
win or free citizens
Программу
win?
хунты сформулировал,
The
пожалуй,
program, the agenda of the junta
руководитель частной военной компании.
has been formulated by the billionaire, the owner of the private military company, Wagner, Yevgeny Prigozhin. And he stated this publicly.
Мосты и театры.
It's enough of building bridges and theater. Everybody should work for defense in Russia.
Россия должна стать
For some time, Russia should be like North Korea.
вернуть,
The children of the elite have to be recovered to Russia.
вести всеобщую мобилизацию.
We need a general mobilization. We have to close the borders.
Это программа
Yeah,
военной хунты.
this is the program, the agenda of a military junta.
Она
And I'm going to tell you,
проявление действующего президента.
this will take place without removing the current president.
Переворот без смены власти.
So how can you have
Сразу могу вам сказать,
this change
когда говорят,
without a change of persons?
поддерживает Путина,
Well, I can tell you, many support Putin. It's not true that he's not being supported. The older generation
поддерживает Владимира Путина.
is supporting Vladimir Putin.
Поколение
The
его
older generation is his foundation. He has people to rely on. This is a generation
стариков,
of abandoned old people
которые снова хотят
who again
ощутить жизнь, которые снова
want to feel alive
величие Родины.
and make their contribution to their homeland. And Putin understands this very well.
Кто же противостоит возможной хунте этим вооруженным людям?
Who will resist this junta? You may be surprised.
Говорить правду
Only the possibility to say
вооруженным людям,
the
которые
truth can withstand those who are grabbing for power.
не дайте закрыть.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's not allow YouTube to be closed down. Let's not allow Wikipedia to be closed down.
Это последние возможности.
These are the last outlets where content can be shared by journalists.
В начале 20 века
In the 19th and 20th century,
армия не получила донесений.
doves were used for
И хотят
mail.
уничтожить и
And
Википедию.
if YouTube and Wikipedia and virtual private networks are closed, then there is no connection.
Инженер
Oddly enough,
сейчас и есть
engineers
борьбы за свободу слова.
have to fight
Против диктаторов.
for
Главное в антивоенном.
freedom of the press.
Последнее. Я вижу
And that is the core. I know that Yuri is already pointing to my watch. Can I have one more minute?
Спасибо.
Thank you.
ЮНИСЕФ,
UNICEF,
Организация по защите детей ООН,
the Organization for the Protection of Children, is willing
украинских
to
детей.
deal with the fate of
Украина
Ukrainian
относится к этому хорошо.
children.
Давайте поддержим.
I don't know whether Ukraine supports this. Let's support UNICEF to make sure that Ukrainian children can return to their
Еще одно.
parents and to their homeland. And one more thing.
Вот Украина и вот Россия. Только
Here you have Ukraine and Russia.
друг с другом.
Only two people can talk to each other. That is Dmitry Lubinets, the Human Rights Commissioner for Ukraine, and Tatiana Moskalkova for the Russian side.
Как эти два разных, которые
This
находятся
should be filmed.
конфликта.
They can have, a conflict. They serve different
Сотни и сотни пленных.
prisons, but they have organized the exchange of so many prisoners of war. These are people who don't like each other at all, but they are making a major effort. Let's support them in that work. In this hell, we have to reduce the number of orphans and widows.
Российскому телевидению за последние
On Russian television, in the last weeks,
сказали,
200 times you could hear
и как нужно применять ядерное
that nuclear weapons may have to be used.
Похоже на рекламу.
200 times in 1 week.
Владимир Путин
This is just like a commercial for pet food.
из нас не знает.
So, will Putin push the button? We don't know.
Говорил солдат Швейк.
As
Встретиться в
soldier Schweig said, can we meet at 6 o'clock
будет ли у нас
after the war? Well, can we do that? Can we meet after the war?
это оставшееся время проживем по-человечески.
Let's try to spend the time we have left in a humane way. I have a plea to you. There are fantastic Ukrainian journalists,
И их съемки
Mstislav
сняли
Chernov and Yevgeny Maloletka.
в Мариуполе.
They have
Журналисты.
made a documentary in Mariupol, and they stayed there when the city was dying. The fate of the people was their own fate.
Могли умереть.
They could have died
Они не были.
any moment.
Они были.
They were not only observers, but they were right in the middle of the tragedy.
Украинские репортеры хотят учредить
These
премию украинским
correspondents
документалистам.
should get an award. Those documentary filmers who are now filming on the front, who are filming the tragedy
Этого ада.
of this hell. Well, let's support them. I'm turning to you, Mr. President, to Deutsche Welle.
Мстислава Чернова и
Let's
Малолетки.
support Mstislav Chernov and Yevgeny Maloletka. And then we may meet at 6 o'clock after the war. Thank you.
Dmitry Muratov.
Спасибо.
Спасибо огромное. Спасибо.
Thank you so much indeed.
Ну, пару...
Well, 15 minutes.
Дмитрий, прошу.
Yeah. I still have a few questions. 1 year and a half year, we've had this special military operation, which the rest of the world calls a war. Now, you've talked about a generation which Putin is based on, but there is also the middle-aged generation. They also support Putin, and maybe it's late, because otherwise, they cannot withdraw from the war because it would be shameful. What are you telling them?
У западных колумнистов.
I often read in the Western press that they exist but haven't seen them. So you don't know any young people who support him. Well, I knew them. But I don't know anybody who says, okay, we're against the war, but let's win now. I haven't seen that. There's nobody who is immune against propaganda. Propaganda and radiation are pretty much the same. Now, when you speak about propaganda, what needs to be done so that people are not so much a victim of this? For example, they've been told that there are Nazis in Ukraine in power, that this is denazification. I don't think anybody speaks about it anymore in Russia, because hardly anybody believes in demilitarization and denazification and the expansion of NATO. NATO has expanded 2 times, and in the Ukrainian parliament there is not a single nationalist or fascist party. So let's turn to something else. Russia's president has an idea to build a new world and end the history of democracy. That's what he's trying to achieve. You've been awarded the Nobel Peace Award, and many are willing to even cede territory, make any compromise to achieve peace. Well, thank you for this question.
Я только никого не хочу учить.
I don't want to teach anybody. As soon as somebody speaks out, particularly my compatriots, it's about they have to teach somebody. I'm just going to share an observation.
Аналитиков, блогеров.
Reading analysts, bloggers, journalists in the media.
О чем там говорится?
What do they write about?
Украина должна наступать. Войска Путина сейчас.
Ukraine has to attack. Russian troops will be disseminated. Tomorrow we'll have victory. So the bloggers are sending an army into battle as if they were football supporters.
Судьбой армии будет распоряжаться только украинский народ.
Leave the decisions of the Ukrainian army to the Ukrainian people. But I have this impression that we've invested a lot into this war and now want a return on investment.
Давайте понимать, что нельзя так ставить вопрос.
Let's understand that this is the wrong approach. And when they say that Putin's army is going to run away, no, dear Annas, they're not running away. The whole power of the former Soviet Union is working to withstand this. Let's be realistic and let's not fool ourselves and believe our own propaganda. When the war will be over, what will be Russia like? What will Russia be like? I cannot think about the future right now. For me personally, I am not a scientist, I don't do horoscopes. 15.5 million refugees are now on the way. That's more than after the Second World War. 5.5 million Ukrainian children, they need help. We have to exchange prisoners of war. We have to help refugees. This is what we should be dealing with. We have to understand that when people get tired of the war will win.
Дмитрий, последний вопрос, который я не...
And the last question, Dmitry, I have to ask is, because we are among colleagues, journalists, for 30 years you've been the chief editor of Novaya Gazeta. A year ago you had to stop publishing, which was a time when your newspaper was needed than ever before. Why did you do it? Well, we've been closed. We had our license withdrawn. We had 5 or 7 litigations. The website was closed, the newspaper. But if you have a virtual private network, VPN is the top media in Russia, then you can easily find a new newspaper. A part of our colleagues left after the beginning of the war. They started their own publication, which is called Novaya Gazeta Europa. You can read it without VPN.
Dmitry Muratov, laureat Nobelevской премии мира.
Dmitry Muratov, thank you so much for you, and thank you for your patience. Thank you.
And